It seems to be a well-known rule of thumb that, though bigger and more overblown, a sequel never quite tops the original. However, there occasionally comes that rare case where the second entry in a series actually surpasses the first. I think many people would agree that Terminator 2 Judgment Day, James Cameron's follow-up to his 1984 classic, definitely falls under the latter category. It just steps everything up to the next level, from the effects to the suspense, to the action scenes, to the emotion, to the characters. Taking place several years after its predecessor, Terminator 2 picks up with Sarah Connor having done her best to raise her now teenage son John in preparation for impending nuclear war and subsequent battles with the machines. Unfortunately, she's been shunned and locked up in a mental institution. Suddenly, a new Terminator, a T-1000, is sent back in time to murder John before he can lead the resistance to victory. In response, a second Terminator, resembling the one from the first film, is sent to protect the kid at all costs and potentially prevent the apocalyptic future from ever occurring. The characters are even more fleshed out here, which is already impressive given the high standard. I can't say enough good things about Linda Hamilton. She completely owns the character of Sarah Connor this time around, significantly more intense and solidifying her status as one of the best female action heroes in cinematic history. She still has those vulnerable moments that let you know that she's the same character, but the physical and emotional changes are played to such an extreme that you can't help but admire Hamilton's commitment and presence. Arnold Schwarzenegger is also back, and he's allowed to give a deeper portrayal of the Terminator this time around. He never lets you forget that he's playing a soulless machine, but the way he gradually learns to be more human is handled in a believable way that never becomes too cheesy. Part of that has to do with who he is playing off of. Edward Furlong as the teenage John Connor is one of those great child characters in film. He's brash and foul-mouthed, just like a real kid. However, the way that the character uses that as a facade to hide his emotions gives Furlong something identifiable to play with. And the fact that a character this obnoxious never becomes the least bit grating or unlikable is a real credit to both the script and the performance. Another returning actor is Earl Bowen as Dr. Silberman, who's put in charge of Sarah's rehabilitation. He's even more obnoxiously condescending in this film, with Bowen as entertaining as ever and making it all the more satisfying when he gets his comeuppance. Minor players include Xander Berkeley and Jeanette Goldstein as John's foster parents, who don't really get much to do but are fun when they're there. The same goes for Michael Biehn, who memorably returns as Kyle Reese for an emotionally haunting dream sequence in the extended cut. One actor who's relatively shortchanged when it comes to credit is Joe Morton as Miles Dyson, the man responsible for the creation of Skynet. Despite the terrible things that his creation will do, he himself is actually a pretty likable family man, providing a nice contrast exemplifying the theme that having the best intentions can sometimes lead to the worst of outcomes. Last but not least is Robert Patrick as the T-1000, who you would never guess would be a match for Schwarzenegger. Like how Dyson's D's would mislead you about the man himself, the T-1000's small and skinny stature is in direct contrast to how effective he is as a killing machine. Being made of liquid metal, he's nearly indestructible. In addition, the fact that Patrick never loses his icy composure and can seemingly switch personalities on the fly makes for a terrifically creepy villain. When discussing this particular character, one has to mention the effects, which were a landmark in computer-generated imagery when this film came out. In my opinion, these effects still hold up today, probably because the T-1000 doesn't necessarily have to be photorealistic much of the time. It's liquid metal, it can be as malleable or as rigid as it wants to be. Aside from that, there's still an extensive use of practical effects utilized here. They all look great. Stan Winston and his team once again hit it out of the park with how tangible a lot of the effects look. Speaking of tangibility, that feeling extends to the script and its characters. Seeing as they spend significantly less time being chased, they are given more time to breathe. We go deeper into the emotional core of Sarah Connor, and, to a lesser extent, her son John. The first film explored the potential of artificial intelligence and technology. Not only does the sequel expand on that, but it also goes into human nature and the drawbacks associated with it. The way that these elements and themes are weaved together into a big budget blockbuster is just fascinating, and definitely elevates this above your standard popcorn flick. However, if that's all you're looking for, even the action scenes are taken up a notch. They're all shot very clearly, and you'd be amazed at some of the stunts that they get away with. What's even more impressive is the fact that it never gets old. After hearing about the 100th gunshot and seeing the 20th vehicle get totaled, I was still hungry for more. It's because, unlike some directors, Cameron and co-writer William Wisher Jr. infused the movie with enough substance to make the shootouts and explosions mean something. Of course, Brad Fiedel returns to score. You still have the simplistic, eerie approach that he took with the first movie, but there are a handful of scenes where the music is less industrial, suiting the theme of the film. Terminator 2: Judgment Day, as well as its predecessor, is one of the greatest sci-fi action films ever made. The characters are more fleshed out, the action is grander and more exhilarating, the effects are exceptional, the emotional core is still strong, and the themes and messages are ever potent.